Good morning. I want to welcome everybody to our special called board meeting for the Forsyth County Board of Education. It is Monday, January 31st, and at 9:30 a.m. Mr. Cleveland is not able to attend in person, but I do believe we have him on the line. Mr. Cleveland, can you hear us? Okay, very good. So at this time, I'd like for everybody to rise and start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Okay, in front of us, we have an agenda. Is there a motion to approve or deny this agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add old business item 4 and renumber number 4 to 5, with old business item number 4 being consideration to endorse the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners redistricting map from the October 19th meeting of the Board of Ed. Basically, we would just like to spend a couple minutes of reviewing the process we did in October when we reviewed the map we were sent then and kind of why we approved it, just to kind of refresh our memories. It's been several months, and that way we kind of tee up the conversation for today.
Okay, just so that I understand correctly, we will add agenda item number 4, which would be old business to discuss the October 19th Board of Education meeting regarding the map, and then that would move the consideration of the new map to item number 5 and then adjournment to number 6.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a second, all in favor to amend the agenda? All right, 5. All right, so we will move on to old business. Okay, so the motion to amend the agenda is approved.
Second.
And second by Darla, and all in favor. Thompson. So we will move to old business, talk about the map in October 19th.
All right, next I'll kick it off. So just trying to back up in the process, in October, the county had been working on, they had received the census data information. Every 10 years, the United States does a census and they get new numbers, and for that reason, they need to redistribute the population throughout the county to make sure that each elected official, each district is within with 1% difference within each district. And Forsyth County actually grew 75,000, almost 76,000 people. So in order to do that, they took the census data and they redistributed the numbers, the staff did, and they presented that to the Board of Commissioners, and they looked at that and they created a map. That map was then sent over to the Board of Education for consideration. And what we did was they sent it over to Dr. Bearden and myself, and we looked at that map, and each one of us, I had a conversation with each board member individually because we have to be careful of our laws and rules. And we went over the map to see if we had any concerns or questions and to make sure it met the criteria that is set by law. And there's a few criteria. Some of the large criteria are that each sitting elected official has to remain in their district. It does have to stick within the percentages. And so we just wanted to, Sandy, can you bring up the map that was sent over to us at that time? Yeah. If you could bring up the one with the overlay. The map that we've had for the last 10 years, as I call it, the kind of the tried and true map, had a lot of lines that were just unusually shaped. So when we first saw the map, I know when we step back and we do redistricting, we always want the map to pass what we call the visual test. And so when we saw the map, just look at myself here, our first impressions of it, and if you look at this map, the solid areas are the new map. The blue lines indicate what the old map looked like. So you can see the old lines were rather jagged, we'll say. So our first impression was it passed the visual test, that it was clean and straight lines. It also came from the staff, it was prepared, so we knew the data was correct. It kept all sitting officials in their existing districts. And another thing that we knew, our predecessor was Nancy Roche. The District 5 had always been a very elongated district that ran along the lake, which was geographically a difficult district to manage. Another thing that was different this map that we liked was that it ran all along Georgia 400, so each of the 5 districts now had, so we thought, some skin in the game. Each of us had a little bit of 400, which is a major corridor of the county, and a lot where the development goes along, as well as when we do our school zones, we try, when possible, to not cross over those major barriers. Because it was very similar to the old map, but cleaned up. It was not a significant change for the constituents, and for us, it was, like I said, similar to our tried-true map of 10 years ago. So we felt that that was not a huge adjustment, and it kind of met just what was needed to adjust for the census map changes. It also, therefore, stayed consistent with the feeder patterns that are true for the Board of Education, which is we have 41, 42 schools, and it's our feeder patterns and trying to keep track with all of our schools is a lot of relationships to build, and that was important for us. One of the nice things, District 5 didn't have a high school, so to speak, in its own, and this replaced and put Lambert into District 5, so each zone has a high school now, or at least more than one. And then last but not least, best we can tell, and this is not our area of expertise, we also felt that it seemed to keep the Board of Commissioners' communities of interest intact, which is actually a criteria from the state that redistricting does keep communities of interest intact. So for those reasons, as we discussed it, we felt that this was a good map. It redistricted and addressed the needs for the population. It was a clean and neat map, and we just felt that that was a logical reason. So for those reasons, we supported the map as the Board of Commissioners did at the time. So that's just a little bit of history, if that refreshes our memory to get us to the point of where we're at today. And then at that point, the Board of Commissioners then went on to vote and pass the map. And on the following Thursday, they were sending this map along with a letter down to the delegation to say that it was a recommendation from both of the groups that this be the map that the delegation bring to the General Assembly to be voted on. Both of our bodies, both the Board of Education and the Board of Commissioners, are only a recommending body. This gave from October to whenever they voted on this, which is most likely in February, for the delegation to do whatever they felt was best with the map or recommend changes. So if anybody wants to add anything to that, it's kind of
Well, you want
the
to
history.
You want to go on with the timeline, how this all became. They talked to us about the delegation wanted to meet with us
On the 6th.
on the 6th.
On the 6th, yeah.
Well, and I think you did a really good job summarizing what occurred in October. And then you also have a nice timeline of the changes. So on the 6th, I believe, is when we were presented with different map options, 3 different map options.
On January 6th,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
All right.
And then scheduling for the meeting to occur on the 12th.
All right, I can go over that if you want. I've got that written down here as well. So yes, on January 6th, the delegation met with a small group of us to say they had some, as is their right, the delegation has the right to add on different criteria or additional criteria than the general ones that are offered, and they had some ideas, which are actually very interesting and good ideas. They felt it was worth entertaining the idea to split the city with at least 3 elected officials, 3 members. They also wanted a minimum of 2 members to be in the north, the south, and try to have at least 2 in the east and west. And they also, as is a normal rule, is to maintain as many communities of interest as possible. So they wanted the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education to revisit the map and look at that as additional criteria. So that information was given to us, that details on January the 18th. And they also, at that point, presented to us the concept of what we refer to as the hub and spoke, or I think of as the wheel, where the map kind of centers from the city of coming out, kind of a different design. So I think that's where we kind of have some concerns.
Okay, and I wrote mine down because I have a tendency to ramble, and I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to remember everything. So I want to just take a moment to share where I stand. turn my mic on. And my reasoning on the district map situation. Back in October, we approved the map that was sent to us by the county that had been redrawn to meet the census requirements. This map had no big changes and, in my opinion, was very straightforward and logical. I had several conversations about this map with our board chair and was very comfortable with it. Forward to January, and we hear from our legislative delegation that they'd like to have a meeting to discuss the district mapping. At the meeting, which radically changed a map, which radically changed all the districts, was introduced. Since then, I believe no less than 5 different maps have been introduced for consideration, I think. We had 3, and then that one's 4, and then the one last week. So I don't have a problem with changing the district lines, especially if there's a good reason. My problem is that the process has been rushed. I believe to change something so radically, we need transparency, citizen input, town halls for discussion, and careful consideration from all angles. I don't think a month is enough time to do our due diligence. Therefore, I believe the map from October is our best option for this year. Then we have a year to gather input, listen to our constituents, look at the data, and think about all the implications and develop a well-thought-out map if need be. This process can be done every year, and I just don't support rushing with such major things to be considered. So that's where I stand.
No, and
I would echo exactly your sentiments as well. One thing that I've learned this past year as my first year on the board is that I feel like things are not rushed as the Board of Education. I feel like with redistricting, when we do schools, there is transparency. We do look for feedback. When you're changing the map, and I've had good discussions. I've had a discussion with Laura Simonson. She had good ideas on the new map. So I think there's good conversations to be had, and I think there's pros to both maps, to this one and then also the one that was approved earlier. But my issue is it doesn't seem in line with the way that the Board of Education functions, which is to take those steps to be able to have community input. And I expressed that on the 21st. I said, no matter what happens, can we just, I would just suggest putting it out for the public. I wasn't totally aware of the deadlines of, if it could be done every year, but if it is within that realm, I do think that it is worth just slowing down a bit to give the community the opportunity to look at it, to review it, and take their points into consideration.
I do think that there was a lot going on in the fall. I know our delegation was busy. They were doing the congressional maps and the state maps, so I think they had a lot on their plate at the time. So I don't think it
In
was
special
just
session.
special session. And it is a complicated process. They weren't allowed to introduce the legislation to change the maps at that time. The background work can be done as far as looking at maps and adjusting them. They just can't submit the legislation at that point. But we could still do the grunt work behind the scenes, or at least put out for public input. But when we do redistricting, it's a very specific process. We put out the criteria, we list who might be impacted. That's what I like about this map. It really literally defines who is impacted by this. But we put out the steps, we put out the date for the meetings, all the information of where they can communicate, the online surveys, it's LSC meetings, the town halls, all that information. So if we knew that we were going to be on this side of this work, we would have started it back in October. But I don't think anybody knew it was. I don't think they knew they wanted to have that big of a change. So it's just the time frame.
Yeah,
I was going to see if, Tom, do you have anything that you would like to add about old business and the map that we approved on October 19th?
No, but it's a process, and I agree with it.
This is the first time I've been part of this redistricting, and I have not been involved in the past, but is it common for them to hold public hearings? Because I know in October there was no public hearings either, and the map was approved by both boards without public hearings. So is it common for that?
As far as
We've never had a radical change. As I was on the board for the last one, and it was just adjusted with the numbers, and it wasn't such a radical change.
Well, and I think too, this map was out, and I agree with you that it wasn't such a radical change, splitting districts, moving commissioners or Board of Eds to a different district. And I think this was out there since October, and so if the decision wasn't made, I don't know if there was a formal public meeting, but I think, it has been out there for people to review. And if the deadline is February or whenever their deadline is, it's been out since October, so that's my,
So you're saying that the map that we approved in October has been out there for community feedback to the delegation, because we would not revisit it, so it would be
That's
feedback
correct.
to the delegation. who
right, so this is
ultimately
our
has the-
approved,
Yeah.
this is what our
And
recommendation
it's a
is.
recommendation. But and I did double check what happened 10 years ago, and I did check with the past commissioner, was told that they did have, at the commissioner side, had public hearing, at least one, and had a person speak. And I can't remember if they spoke in favor or against, but they did have a public hearing on the matter. Again, we're just a recommending body.
Right, no, we're just recommending botting, and I think for me, the reason that when, back in October, we looked at this map, for me, serving on the Board of Education, I think is a little bit different than the Board of Commissioners.
I agree.
What I do is I look at a county as a whole. Yes, I do represent District 1 and the people in District 1 and communicate with them, but every decision I make is not making District 1 better than any other district. When we make a decision, the schools in my district get just as much equal as District 5 or 4. And so looking at the district map, to me, it's,
It's more
That-
holistic.
it is, and it kind of, for me, is like, it doesn't matter who I represent as long as I'm representing the people the best I can. So for the district lines to be moved or whatever, to me, it doesn't concern me at all.
Yeah, and that's, I would agree with that sentiment as well. When you're talking about the feeder patterns, in the end, whatever the district lines are for voting, it really doesn't have an impact on what we do. It doesn't have an impact on what we do at the Board of Education as far as keeping the feeder patterns. I just want to make sure
And
that.
I agree with that. We all love the schools and all the kids. We work a lot differently, but I can't support the process with which the new one, I just don't feel like it's been thought out, and it's just not something, I feel like it's, just hadn't been out there like we should do to make a big change.
Tom, you mentioned concern about the criteria. Are you still okay with the criteria, or just it's more about the process?
The process has kind of been different, let's say. For me, it's been an artistic process because it's only been pictures of maps. I'm more a data and a process guy, so, the first map that we looked at, I was able to accept that without a lot of data behind it because it made sense. The changes in the census were probably accomplished with that. I still didn't see the census data with it, but it made more sense. As the map started changing and ebbing and flowing back and forth from different variations, I still have not seen any numbers to what this looks like, both current numbers with the lines drawn and future numbers with the line drawn. We do that as well with our school redistricting. And so the numbers are key to part of this because we're supposed to try to make a sustainable change to the future. That's one of the guidelines. The other guideline that we had were 3 districts needed to touch the city. That didn't really make sense to me. So I had a little bit of an issue with that guideline that recently came out. And to me, the one thing I've been stating all along is that the goal and the map should not allow any one district to have a number of people from it in different districts. Meaning, if you had all 5 districts touching the city of Cumming, you can get a small group of people in the city of Cumming to then be in all the seats of the government for the county, and that's not good for the county. The diversity of opinion from the north, the south, the east, and the west, we know is, diverse board members, and that's what I call diverse, is different opinions, different social setups in their homes and where they live. To me, that's important to have that difference coming to the table, to have discussions, to make decisions for the county. And that's what this map needs to drive, bringing people from all over the county together so we can have good conversation. So simplicity
All right, thank you. Does that conclude the discussion of old business?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next agenda item would be to consider to endorse the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners redistricting map. This map was approved by the Board of Commissioners on Tuesday, the 25th. I received the map that evening and forwarded it on to the board members for their review. I do believe that we've had a large amount of time to answer any questions that we may have. I know several of you did take the time and opportunity to reach out with different stakeholders and to commissioners to get feedback. And the other thing I want to say is over the last couple of days, I want to say thank you to the commissioners' staff with the GIS and going through and answering the questions and things like that. I know it's not been easy on them. They work hard. They got a lot on their plate. And this just added to it, so I just want to publicly thank them for their time. So at this time, is there a motion to approve or deny the endorsement of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners redistricting map from Tuesday, the 25th?
Sandy, can you bring up that map? Yes. Please.
Now, before we can have a discussion, we have to have a motion, so.
Please. Yes, please.
Mm-mm.
Actually, no, it's the
All the
I5,
items. I'll go to the left. There you go.
I6.
5I.
I don't know if it's appropriate in point of order. I think the map is still not a correct map and that it's mislabeled. So before a motion, I'm just concerned that
That's not the correct map.
I think it's the map that the commissioners approved.
Prior to
But
the
I'm
changes.
This is the one that they voted on.
On Tuesday, the 25th?
I believe so, yes.
Then that's the
I
final.
think we have this is the correct map they voted on. I'm concerned that it's mislabeled and therefore maybe not the legal map because it has, I know it's okay for the commissioners, they're swapped, but it has Lindsay as District 2.
But since we don't have a motion, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I just so I don't know if we want to even vote on a map that might not be
We're not going to.
legit.
Unless somebody makes a motion, right?
Well, I just wanted to clarify that if anybody did.
Well, I
make a
think the
motion-
other thing we need to be clear is that if
It's-
nobody makes a motion, then it will default back to the map originally approved by the board on October 19th.
'cause this would,
Would be the recommendation.
It would stay, we're just not changing anything.
Okay.
because this would make you District 2 commissioner next year.
So I don't understand what you're saying.
What
Are
I'm
you saying
is-
that we can't even make a
I am not
correct
sure.
decision because the map is incorrect because of the labeling of the location
Yeah,
of the?
I wouldn't think we would want to vote on a map that I don't think is accurate map because this would make Lindsay,
Show me where the inaccuracy is.
if you go down on the legend, if the legend has, could you, thank you. And I realize that. So it has
District 5 in the green.
the colors
it has
are labeled
two.
opposite, yes. So Lindsay is currently,
5E.
she's 5E, she lives, which is the purple region. which
Oh, so I would become 2
she would
on
become-
that.
So they're renaming,
And we knew that.
Right.
right, but think about the logic there, that means, and I think the law says that for 2 years you can remain, if you have 2 years left in your term, it's okay to switch district numbers.
2 or more, right?
Two or more, something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
So that information being presented in this map. So this is the map that we have to make a decision on. We have to make a
Yeah.
motion on.
Well, so, I guess,
So I guess I'll ask one more time, is there a motion to approve or deny the endorsed map of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners that was approved by them on Tuesday, the 25th? All right, at this time, Sandy, if you would, just note that the motion failed and that we failed for the motion of the endorsement of the map.
I'll make a motion that they consider, and I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but I'm just gonna make a motion that they consider, and I don't know if it's a good idea, but it's food for thought, that they consider having a map, the map we approved in October for the Board of Education, and potentially this map for the Board of Commissioners. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but it's for consideration. I don't know if it's good or not.
So we have a motion to adapt the map on October 19th as the Board of Education. And then this could be the BOC map.
Something for them to consider. And I know it's a recommendation, something for them to consider.
Is there a second? All right, that motion has also,
Do we do discussion or no?
no, it has
It's
to.
only if there's a second. I'm
Yep.
fine if it doesn't, it's just.
So
the
both
thought is
motions
out there,
have failed.
But now they have that thought. There
And
you
then
go.
the next agenda item is to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Yes.
moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Give it to Kristen.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the meeting. Thank you, Tom.